Hey friends, so I always start this way. I always say I'm so excited, and it's true. I live in a state of perpetual excitement because I love doing this new version of the podcast because every single person here has a meaningful relationship to me and hopefully to your future. And today's guest is no different. Les Alfred is someone you probably already know because her podcast is massive. It's huge. It is big within Black women because, her recent rebrand into She's So Lucky, comes from being a balanced Black girl. And so many of us turn to her podcast for inspiration, for support, for wellness tips, and to find community because we identified with the people she was bringing into the conversations and with her own journey that she so candidly and vulnerably shared with us every single episode. And I'm grateful because she's also a good friend of mine. She is someone who I admire and respect and adore. She makes me laugh. She's smart. She's pretty. She's goals. And she's here today to tell us everything about podcasting, about having a platform, about the responsibility we all have in this day and age, to use our mics well, and a little bit more about the behind the scenes of what it looks like to do all of this. So Les, I'm so glad you're here. We're going to get into it. Are you ready? You never do this, by the way. You are rarely on this side of the mic.
I know. Not often.
Why is that? How many interviews? I mean, you've done some.
Well, I think it's because I don't pitch myself to be on other people's shows. So I do when I'm invited, but I don't pitch myself. No.
Yeah. Do you not like doing interviews or like?
I do. I actually really like being a guest. It's a lot easier. I just don't have time to pitch myself.
That's
and
fair.
I don't have PR. So unless someone reaches out and invites me.
That's fair. That's fair. No, you love to work though. You stay working, girl. So I love it. First question I have to ask you and that I ask everyone is if there was one thing about your lived experience, through this podcast journey truly you are like from the bottom, like from one listener all the way up, did the hard work. Unlike a lot of people nowadays, people just get their podcast. You know what I mean? They're assigned to them through fame or influencer, but you are sort of like us, the true, started from the bottom, now we here. If there's one thing you would want people to know about where you are, this world, this responsibility, and how you feel about it, what would it be?
That I don't have the answers. I don't have some amazing strategy or some how-to book that I'm keeping to myself, that I'm just trying things, figuring it out. I'm a girl who just bought a microphone and started throwing spaghetti at the wall and never really stopped. And then I'm constantly pivoting, experimenting, trying new things. I don't know what works. I don't know what doesn't work. It's just all about continuing to try and continuing to evolve.
Wow. Okay. So when I tell you, it's rare that people actually surprise me with what they say, because one thing I know about you is you read, and anyone who knows her, anyone who's watching this on YouTube, which we're on YouTube. If you haven't, you've got to see this because she's beautiful. She's worth looking at. And I put on a wig today. You should watch. I did the effort. I did my part. You do your part. So I will say, you are so well composed, put together. You are an excellent interviewer. I actually am inspired by you regularly to try to get better at my craft. And when I think about this, it is surprising to me that you would say you don't have all the answers, because I know people be looking girl, So tell me more about that, about this sort of, why y'all listen to me? I don't know all the things.
I don't. I literally this morning got a text, can I pick your brain text? And I was like, baby, there ain't nothing left to pick. There's nothing. There's nothing.
I got it.
I'm already doing the jobs of 10 different people to keep my own stuff running. I don't know the answer to your question. I just try stuff. And if it doesn't work, then I just try something else. But I don't have the answer. People ask me all the time about podcasting. How do I start a podcast? How do I grow one? And I'm like, I can tell you pretty easily how to start one. That's the easy part. How to grow it? I don't know. You just have to keep doing it. You have to talk about things that people want to hear, and you have to keep reinventing it to get in front of people, because everybody is changing. What people want to hear changes. How they find shows, it's constantly changing. What worked for me in 2019 when I was first starting is entirely different than 2025. So I actually can't really tell you how to start a successful podcast in 2025 because I haven't done that. I started years ago and nobody listened to my podcast for 3 years. I made no money for 3 years and I wasn't able to do it full time for 5 years. And I actually on TikTok the other day, someone engaged with a really old vlog that I did from like January of 2023. And it was a morning routine vlog. And in this morning routine vlog, I woke up at 4:30 in the morning. I did my little journal, meditate. I was at the gym by 5. I worked out, came home at like 6 a.m., showered, got dressed. And from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m., those were my hours that were like my business content podcast hours. And then at 9 a.m., I logged on and I did my 9 to 5. And I did that for 5 years to get to a point where I could do it full time. And I don't say that to sound, facetious or stuck up or whatever. A lot of people are not willing to do that. And also a lot of people are not able to do that. There's willing and then there's also able. And I had a really fortunate position where I was able to do both, where I was willing to get up early and to do things that I didn't want to do. And I was able, where I didn't have kids. I had a remote job. I didn't have a commute. There was a version of that where I did have a commute and I did have those things, but it was just me being ready to step into doing things that I didn't want to do because I felt like it could lead me to something that I really did want to do. And I didn't stop until I got the thing that I wanted, no matter how long it took.
Wow. So I think that's the lesson there, right? I think there's a little, not stopping until you get the thing that you're looking for. But I mean, also from the outside, to me, in so many ways, you're just starting. You have rebranded, you're doing incredibly with a bigger microphone. I mean, you're signed to one of the top networks. You're out here landing interviews with Gabrielle Union and, there's always someone new on the docket. I don't want to do spoilers, but you are in LA right now, because you had to go where all the people are, so knowing that this is something that's only getting bigger and better for you, during those 5 years where it was tough, what's wrong with you, girl? That's hard. I don't know how else to say it. As someone who just had a baby, it's tough to find that motivation. I know there's some people listening right now who are saying, okay, that's good and great, but not 3 years of no reward, no anything. What even drove you to keep doing it?
Nobody was coming to save me. Nobody was coming.
But what did you need saving from?
I wanted money. I wanted a lifestyle. I knew. I worked in corporate for 13 years and I did pretty well. But there was such a limited ceiling for me in corporate. My little raises each year, the opportunities, what people were willing to give me in that space was very limited. And what I was able to create for myself, even though it took a long time to get anything from it, I knew that there was something there. I knew that if I could just get to a certain stride, that there would be no limit. And I knew what I was getting in corporate wasn't enough. It wasn't enough to pay off my student loans. It was not enough for me to be financially independent and live in New York and live in LA and do the things that I know that I have needed to do as somebody who doesn't have outside financial support outside of myself. My family is so incredibly supportive emotionally, but they're not in a position where they can financially help me. My parents can't pay my bills. They have enough of their own that they're going through. I don't have a partner. It's up to me. I knew the quality of life that I wanted, and I realized, okay, I think maybe podcasting, maybe content can be a way to do it if I can just hit that right spot, if I can do it long enough, if I can hit my stride long enough. And I just kept doing it until it started to pay me back.
Now that is remarkable and admirable. And I think we all look to find the thing that we're able to commit to for 3, 5, however many years until it pays out. And it's honestly it's an age-old tale, right? It's like people say, you keep making the music, you keep, doing the art, you keep going live, whatever happens. But during that time, what were some of the hard points? There had to be days where it was like, I'm sick and tired of people talking trash, or no one's listening, or I got that 1-star, gotta love the 1-star reviews. You know what I mean? This felt neither balanced or black, and I'm not a girl. I hated this podcast. You get those things. How was that? What were you doing to pick yourself up in those moments? Because especially without the financial reward, that was so much incentive. What were you doing to keep going?
Yeah. I mean, there is so much of it that I do enjoy. And so that I'm grateful for. I
what?
Love interviewing people. I'm so nosy. So you mean to tell me that I can sit down with somebody and I can get in their business and ask them questions that in any other context would not be appropriate for me to ask? And even before I made money, I was like, truly, these people who I admire will hop on a Zoom call with me and answer my questions? sign me up, because I'm very nosy. Also, when I was younger, I really wanted to be a journalist. I wanted to be Oprah. I wanted to be telling stories. I used to, when I was a kid, pretend like I was a magazine editor and make my own magazines and newspapers. So I was always very inclined towards that type of work. But I also learned at a very young age that the real jobs in that space do not pay. So I went the corporate route, and then I did the creator stuff to try and kind of scratch that itch. But I did really enjoy the work. And so I think that's what really kept me going, and just believing in it, believing that I'm onto something here. I'm having conversations that are important. I'm creating something that I'm not hearing anywhere else, and creating what it is I would want to listen to, and really believing in it.
Where did that belief come from if it wasn't externally validated through the things that we're typically used to, whether it's, clicks or comments or cash?
I don't know. I mean, I think maybe the way that I was raised, I think I'm very fortunate to have parents that are super affirming, and in different ways. I think my mom has taught me how to have a really strong sense of self. As long as I can remember, I don't think I've ever heard my mom ever say anything bad about another woman in terms of comparing herself or being catty. She is always complimenting other people, always complimenting me. I never felt that sense of competition that unfortunately a lot of young women feel. So I think that was instilled in me from a very young age from my mom. And I think my dad is just a very affirming person. And from a very young age, with both me and my brother, he's constantly feeding us affirmations and telling us how smart we are, telling us how capable we are. I remember last year, I went home to Seattle for Mother's Day, and we were at brunch, and I was sitting on one side of my dad, and my brother was sitting on the other, and we're all just sitting there having a normal meal. And my dad just looks up and he's like, what? I just really love you guys so much, and I'm so proud of who you both grew up to be, and I wouldn't want you two to be any different than exactly who you are. That's just what he just said on just a random Sunday.
Just say your life is a sitcom, so we can all go
back. It's not a sitcom.
Because for the rest of us who are spending college tuitions and therapy, girl, okay, I'm like, this is
I go to therapy
the greatest
too.
blessing. Well, of course, there's always other things.
Yes, there's always other things. There's other things.
I love that for you.
But I do think that because I grew up being spoken to that way, it did create a sense of belief in me, believing in myself and believing in my abilities that had nothing to do with other people,
Amazing.
had nothing to do with comparison, but just truly believing that if I focused enough on something, that is good enough.
I love that. And I hope everyone hearing that also hears, that's something we can do for each other. That's something that we can do as parents for our kids. This is the byproduct, right, of loving well and allowing your kids to have room to breathe and be, and affirming them where they are. They end up being, popular, famous with clear skin. Isn't this what we all want? As parents, no, so let's go back to the fact that the podcast previously, because we're going to go through the evolution, right? Mm-hmm. It was previously called Balanced Black Girl. Mm-hmm. And, you're talking about these hours of working in this regimen, this, schedule. You're talking 8 years now, of from day one to now of doing this process. How are you keeping your balance, if at all? Because you often hear about the hairstylist whose hair looks jacked up, you know what I mean? Or the stylist who shows up in sweats, Were you finding yourself being one of those people who, you're interviewing, but you're also kind of wondering, is it for me, or, tell us about what we didn't see.
Yeah, the irony, I wasn't balanced at all. But I really can't talk about Balanced Black Girl without talking about my first little venture, which was called The Balance Berry. The Balance Berry was a fitness blog that I started over 10 years ago, and that was how I got my start in content. And how I started that was I had been working in corporate, and I'd also been a personal trainer on the side. And I had, I was teaching fitness classes, and I had all of these clients, and it was like a crazy, crazy schedule. Again, I was waking up at 4 a.m, commuting an hour to go to work, working out before work, working from 6:30 to 3 p.m., commuting 2 hours to the gym, teaching fitness classes into the night, getting home at 10 p.m. and doing it all over again. And that was unsustainable. Mm-hmm. And so I ended up quitting my personal training jobs. And I also at that time just had a really bad relationship with wellness. I had a lot of body dysmorphia. I think especially back then, back in the 2010s, if you spent a lot of time in the fitness industry, it was really hard to not have body dysmorphia. Mm-hmm. And so
what do you mean by that? How is it manifesting? Like, did you not, because you also came from this affirming background
Yeah.
where you were told you were great. Like, where was that clash happening?
I think it was just from being in the fitness space, not being as successful in fitness as I wanted to, and feeling like, okay, well, maybe if I had a six pack, I would be more successful, or maybe I would do better sharing content on social media if I looked like, you know, the Bikini Body Guide girls. And it's just, you can't really be in an environment like that, like in a gym that often, talking to clients. They have body dysmorphia. They're telling you about all their body and food issues. It's really hard to not have that. And I was also young. And, you know, I think my parents did such a great job at being affirming of me. But also, when you're a 23-year-old girl, you're still going to get some of that. And so I had, you know, I was over exercising. I was under eating. I was binging, all of these things. And I realized, okay, this is not good for me. Again, fitness makes no money. My corporate job does. I'm going to quit that. And I started blogging, and I started trying to figure out, what does balance look like for me, in the sense of, how can I care about my health without going overboard, right? How can I care about my health and put good things in my body, but not be obsessed with how many calories I was burning? Because that's kind of the space that I was in. So my thought process when I was trying to talk about balance, when I first started doing content and with the Balance Berry, was, how can we care about our health without going overboard? So that was where the word balance first came into my atmosphere. In 2018, I shut down my old fitness blog because I was honestly just kind of over it. I was overworking in fitness. I'd still been like training clients online. And I also realized that I really like being a student, and I really hate being a teacher. I just don't like it. I don't like giving people workout plans. I don't want to tell people what to do. I don't want to do any of it. But I liked being a student, and I liked learning, and I liked hearing other people's stories. And it kind of reminded me of that stuff that I was interested in when I was younger. So I ended up shutting down the blog. And at the time, I was working as a social media manager at this startup. And I was, you know, sitting at work one day, not really thinking about content, not my content. And I literally just got the idea, start a podcast, name it Balanced Black Girl. I think it was God like giving me the idea in that moment. Was maybe like the one time in my life that I was actually obedient, because I immediately in that moment bought the domain name, went on Amazon, ordered a microphone. I went home from work that night and I Googled and YouTubed everything that I could possibly find about podcasting. Taught myself everything I could.
There wasn't much then either.
There wasn't much,
you were
but
scraping,
you know what? Pat Flynn, that was my guy. Pat Flynn had a bunch of tutorials. I actually got to speak at the same conference as him earlier
so you
this
guys
year.
have met. That's great.
Which was like really cool, because I'm like, yo, you literally taught me how to podcast. And the podcast launched a week later, and that was in 2018. But still, when I was thinking about Balanced Black Girl, it was still this idea of like, how can I care about my well-being without going overboard? So it wasn't this thing of having a super balanced life. That's what it became, and that's what the word meant to become. But my intention in talking about balance was, how can I be well without being crazy? Like,
but I will also say a lot of what you're describing reflects an intensity, if not crazy. But you know, it almost, in what I'm hearing, to reflect back, correct me if I'm wrong, is a 3-year window, 5-year window of intensity. Like, I'm going to start a blog, fitness, intense. I'm going to start training, intense. I'm going to have this podcast. I don't care if it's not winning or not right away, intensity. So one would say that doesn't align with balance. You know, in doing this podcast, I mean, where were other areas of your life? You know, were you dating? Were you in relationships? Were you finding that your physical wellness was changing? Were you still at home? Would you have friends? Like, and I say all of this because as moms, you know, and a lot of, you know, the people who are listening right now, sometimes it feels like some areas always suffering, especially if you want to start a new venture. So as someone who's saying like, look, stick with it, you know, it's good to hear kind of what was happening outside. What does it look like? So we can kind of have that context.
Yeah. So at that time, let's see, when I first started, I was 29. I had just ended a 4-year relationship. I had a long-term boyfriend, and that didn't end well.
Well, especially not for him, because he's watching right now like, dang.
But you know what? I will say to his credit, and I have told him this, it's been a few years since we've spoken, but he was who I was dating during my years of being a fitness blogger and my intensity and a lot of stuff. And I do really credit that relationship with, one, helping me have a better relationship with like food and being normal. When you're spending a lot of time with somebody who does not have those issues, it was very helpful. But also with my content in the early days, I actually think that he saw the potential for me to be doing a lot of the things that I'm doing now that even at that time I hadn't seen yet. And there were so many times when I wanted to quit blogging, quit social media, all of these things. And he would really encourage me to stick with it because and he was super supportive because I actually did think he saw a lot of what I'm doing now in me then that I didn't see. And so I was really grateful, even though that relationship wasn't for forever. Right. He was actually very instrumental in helping me kind of
just the vision of it, though. He didn't actually do anything.
He did not.
Yeah,
no, but was very supportive.
Yeah, I appreciate it. But that's also not an invitation to spin the block.
We bless
you wherever you are to remain where you are.
No. Yeah, he's who even knows what that man. That's what I refer to everyone I've dated is just that man.
That man. Yeah. No, we wish that man the best, but we don't know that man.
No,
we don't know.
No, haven't spoken in years. But that relationship ended. I was a social media manager. I was super broke. I was still living in Seattle. I had 2 roommates. Ugh. It was not a great situation. At the time, I really wanted to move to LA, but I couldn't afford to. And I was just like looking for an outlet that felt more creative and that just felt encouraging and that I was excited to work on. And so when I got the idea for the podcast, I felt like maybe this is going to be the thing. Wow. And that was why I jumped on it so quickly and executed so quickly.
And I think this is great because I hope people hear 2 things. 1, sticking with it, obviously. 2, when God gives you the damn inspiration, please stop sitting on your dream. Like, go do it. The overthinking is where we freeze and pause. And I love hearing that you were like, look, even if it was imperfect, I was willing to kind of move through it imperfectly, but acting all along the way. Now, podcasting since that time, since 2018, 2019, has gone through not just a surge, but almost a reinvention. For those of you who do not know, stats-wise, podcasts are the number 1 pusher of books. They're the number 1 pusher of political ideas. They are the number 1 pusher of wellness, supplements, products. It is a mega platform now, and people are really informed. So the responsibility of some of us OGs, who've been in podcasting since that time and earlier, has increased. So I guess my big question to you is, you've always taken this seriously for yourself, if nothing else. How do you feel about podcasting now? How has it changed for you?
It's hard. I will also say when I first started podcasting, it was because I really didn't want to be on camera. I know.
So funny.
I know.
Oh my gosh.
At the time, I lived in Seattle. People who don't know things about Seattle, it is very cloudy and it is very dark. And again, overcast. I was a working girl. I had a 9 to 5. So I had to do this before work, after work, on the weekends. It was dark. I didn't have ring lights weren't what they are now. I didn't have natural daylight because I wasn't at home filming in the middle of the day. So I couldn't be making YouTube videos and this, that, and the other. But a podcast that I could record in my closet at night and it didn't matter how dark and gloomy it was and it was audio only. Great. I could stick with that. I didn't want to be on camera. I was very camera shy. And so that was what I loved about podcasting at the beginning. Joke's on me because now it's all about being on camera.
Girl, joke's on all of us. I want to get into radio so I could gain weight and just have a career forever. Now look at us.
I know.
I literally was like, I'm going to let myself go. No Botox budget. But no, now everything's on camera.
I had to learn how to dress. I had to learn how to do makeup. I wasn't planning on none of that.
Plot twist, don't learn how to do any of it. Keep the bar low. Then when people see you, they're like, wow, you look great. Nothing but compliments. That's my strategy.
Played myself.
Let people see you in a bonnet cooking in your kitchen like me. Whenever I get dressed, they're like, wow, Nicole, you look nice. Because they know the context. Yep. Give them the range.
Exactly.
So that wasn't the original plan. But, the brand has, which also just letting everyone know, because I think a lot of people hopped into social media around 2020, and it was already a very polished social media. They didn't see some of the mess of us starting out, and I want people to know that side of you that they may not be, some people, your interview with Gabby was amazing. And I say Gabby as if we know each other, which is totally fine. I'm sure she's cool with it. But,
she was so chill. She probably would be.
Of course, no. She's really evolved, I think, into everyone's girlfriend, which is really nice, to see. But knowing that, I really feel like people saw that and came into your world, and you are this famous, polished podcaster, who is on set and has A-list celebrities and all that. But hearing you were in your closet, in sweats, not knowing what you're doing is good to hear, because some of us are going to start from there, But the responsibility of podcasting has also changed. Everybody you put on a mic or put a mic in front of is now associated with you, not just for their ideas, their responsibilities, but you gave them a platform. How do you feel about that? What is your responsibility that you feel you have to the world now that so much has changed in the world of podcasting?
It's a lot. I mean, something that I tell my audience a lot, even if it makes my job harder, is I'm constantly telling them, you guys need to be harder to influence. Be difficult to influence. If someone is influencing you, make them work for it. Make them they need to convince you that they are worth listening to. They need to convince you that they are worth following. Don't just go for the okie doke just because you hear it. Even if you hear me talking to somebody or endorsing something, still think about it. Still do your research. Still question, because it is so important, and we talked about this in the episode we did together for my show, to really have that critical thinking muscle. I was on a podcast recently where I was asked who my favorite comfort creators were. And I think in the moment I answered with just a few random creators that popped into my mind. But if I could go back, I would answer it entirely differently, because I actually don't like the idea of comfort creators.
I didn't even know it was a term. This is how you know I'm not on TikTok or youthful.
It is. Comfort creator is this idea of these creators who you just love to follow, and they feel comfortable for you, and they never let you down, and you just eat up everything they do.
That pedestal must be high.
I don't like it because, first of all, I don't seek comfort in strangers on the internet. That's not where I go for comfort.
It screams unhealthy.
Honestly, it does.
If anything, it should be a challenge place.
Yeah. If I am following someone, it's because I think they're interesting, because I think they're funny, because I like to learn from them. I don't seek comfort from strangers on the internet, and I don't like the idea of that.
That's good. I seek comfort in cheese.
That too.
Yeah, cheese,
much
carbs,
more.
Other things that start with C,
Absolutely.
Not creators.
Yeah. No.
This makes sense to me.
No. And so I am also always reminding my audience, not only do I put my yoga pants on one leg at a time, but I have had the opportunity over the years to sit down with hundreds of amazing, successful women. And everybody who I've sat with is so normal. And they all put their yoga pants on.
Some of them are
one
not
leg
normal,
at a time.
But that's also telling.
It can be. I've been super fortunate that I've had overall good experiences with people. I've thankfully have not had my experience or idea of someone ruined by any means. And I feel very fortunate.
Don't meet your heroes. That sort
right.
of thing.
I feel very fortunate that I've never had an interaction with someone meeting them IRL where I was like, oh,
yeah.
But I am reminded of people's humanity. And so I am just constantly reminding my audience, ask questions. Everybody's human. Everybody's going to have a misstep, a misjudgment. But when you are very strong on your values and what is important to you, you're not as rocked by what somebody on the internet is doing.
Oh, this is so good because I follow you as a friend, but I also enjoy your content as well. And I do feel like there is you are you all the time. You read polished, but you also have areas of growth that you're sharing little by little. But again, your platform is about elevating others and not having the answers, but letting other people share theirs. So following you on Threads has been a joy because it's a platform that, yes, you may share a little bit about the podcast, but we're also seeing this side of you. So, make sure you're following us everywhere, right? Because there's the brand, but then there's also the you. And I'm seeing little glimpses.
See my thoughts.
I know.
I'm low-key so funny, and people don't know.
Not low-key. It's high-key.
I'm really funny,
high-key.
and people don't know. People sleep on how funny I am.
Oh, no. Not just funny, but witty, clever funny. The type
smart
of
funny.
Very, very, if I had sons, girl, ooh, okay, I would be like, this one. Put her in our family. She's funny. These are the genes we want. So, it's repost, because everything is so on time. So I want to know, this Threads version of you, I'm also seeing a growth, a rebirth, an evolution that seems well timed with the evolution of your podcast. Now, I'm going to start there because for people who don't know, Balanced Black Girl is now known as She's So Lucky. And I want to hear more about your thoughts behind it. You've shared it on the podcast, but for people who may not listen, I'm not going to lie. If y'all listen here, you probably listen to her because she's more famous than me. But that said,
not at all.
100%, especially in the podcast world. So that being said, She's So Lucky went through this rebrand, and I have feels about the word luck. So I'm so curious about why the removal of, it being Black girl to be more, I would say more inclusive rather than specific, and just tell us more about that sort of process.
Yeah. I would say it's a couple of things. I loved Balanced Black Girl for what it was. And at the time when I started it, I was so deep in wellness and in wanting to create wellness content and wanting to have wellness conversations. And the old episodes, if people go way back into the archives, the format of the show was very different. How the show started was each episode kind of had a very wellnessy topic, and I would bring on a Black or woman of color expert who could deep dive into that topic. So we'd have hour-long conversations about brain health and gut health and skin and all of these things. And it was like the great nerdy stuff that I loved. And after doing that 300 times, you kind of run out of topics to deep dive on without it getting super repetitive. So that was one thing, was over time, me not really being as interested in talking about wellness as much anymore because we had mostly covered it. Now, of course, there's always things that we could be talking about, but of the things that I really wanted to explore on the show, we had covered in a lot of ways. So that was one piece of it. Two, around the 2022-2023 mark, I started expanding into a bit more lifestyle topics. So a little bit more advice type of episodes, talking a little bit more here and there about what was going on in my life, bringing on guests who may not necessarily be wellness experts, still always centering Black and brown women.
Yes.
That's something that has not changed.
It still hasn't changed.
And won't
Correct.
change.
Correct.
And it was very important to me to actually, even when changing the name of the podcast, to double down on that even more of like, actually, this is not the time to waver on that at all.
Yes.
But who could tell different stories, talking more to entrepreneurs and talking more to founders and talking more to creatives and artists that I really liked about how they created their art and the things that they did. And the audience responded really well to that. And the show actually really started growing.
Yes.
And we started seeing it really take off when we started incorporating more of these types of topics that weren't the super science-y stuff, but were more so things that I think the audience was more excited to apply to their lives. And that was when the show started growing. That is what allowed me to go full time. And that is what really brought the show to another level.
But the She's So Lucky part.
Yes.
Yeah.
So before we changed to She's So Lucky, the content itself had already started to change. The subject matter of the show had started to change. What the episodes were about had started to change. And it got to a point where the name Balanced Black Girl didn't really fit what the show was about anymore, because we weren't talking about wellness in the same way. We weren't really talking about balance in the same ways. And so the first thing that I did want to change was, okay, I need to get away from this word balance. And because that doesn't feel like it really suits me. To our point earlier, I was not balanced.
Right.
And I'm just not. And I've just accepted that about myself. And so I wanted to remove myself from the word balance. Now, whether I have Black girl or not, I'm still a Black woman.
That's right.
So that's not
Going anywhere,
that
anywhere.
Can't, whatever the name of my platform is, that's still who I am and what it's going to be. And that's still who I platform and who I center.
Like Black woman, comma, she's so lucky.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. And then I will also say, after the results of the election last year, I was scared to have a platform that was so literally named for Black women. I felt like, am I going to have like a target on my back? Are brands not going to want to advertise on my show anymore? Am I, putting myself at risk of not being safe because I'm a single woman? I'm a small business owner. Again, I don't have a whole lot of support.
Girl, you gotta
outside
eat.
of myself.
I get it.
So am I like, could this attract something weird? Could my audience be in danger? I just started having thoughts like that of like, I created something really beautiful here, and how can I protect it and be... it wasn't even that I wanted the name to necessarily be more inclusive, but how can I make it a little less assuming on one hand? So all of those things were happening. Another thing that was simultaneously happening was, over the years, the types of pitches that I would get were really intense, because I think for a lot of people, when they think of Black women, they think of struggle.
Give me an example of what you mean by that.
I every week would get an inbox full of pitches about some sort of deep trauma story. And here is why your audience of Black women need to hear about this terrible story, of this terrible study, of all of these terrible things that happened to Black women. And every week my inbox was just full.
Sure.
And there were a lot of things on my show that we have talked about. So we've talked about Black maternal health. We have talked about fibroids. We've talked about these things that we know disproportionately affect us. The audience knows. They're living it. They're feeling it.
Yeah.
They don't need a scary stat.
And we don't need the algorithm.
They need doctors to listen and to help.
Absolutely. To tweak it. And all of a sudden now we're getting nothing but that.
Right.
Absolutely.
It's like, and so it really frustrated me that I wanted to tell stories of goodness, of Black women being amazing, and yet people only saw my show as a place to pitch these like trauma dump stories, even though that wasn't even the stories that I was telling. And so I really wanted to flip that on its head, and not like hashtag Black girl magic, but like, how could I open this up to make it really clear that we are amazing, and this is a space to share our amazingness and make that abundantly clear, while also not making myself a target for any crazies.
Sure.
And also being able to protect my business. And so I decided at the beginning of this year that the podcast was going to get a new name. Didn't know what it was going to be yet. I announced it to my audience, like, hey, y'all, the podcast is going to get a new name. I knew I wanted it to coincide with the beginning of spring, because that just felt like a really good time of like a season of renewal. And then I was like, oh, shit, what am I going to name this podcast? Like, the clock is ticking.
You announced a rebrand before the rebrand.
I did.
Ma'am.
I did.
Put the fire under you. That's what's going to happen.
But I also, my thing was, and people ask me all the time, what was your strategy? My strategy was over communicate. I didn't have a strategy. I just didn't want the audience to be surprised.
Sure.
So I was just telling them like,
it's
coming. It's coming.
That is a marketing strategy, believe it or not. It works.
People loved it. Like, they were so excited. What is it going to be? Like, people were so invested. And so I had an exercise for a period of time where in my morning journaling practice every day, I would jot down 10 different name ideas, and they were all absolute trash.
Oh my gosh. You're the original ChatGPT. People don't realize how easy they have it now. You know what I mean? ChatGPT would have been like, would you like a PDF of that? Like, you don't get that now. You have to do it the old school way.
In my hand. And I just wanted to just like come out with different ideas. And one morning I had Lucky by Britney Spears stuck in my head because I'm a millennial.
Yes.
And the chorus, she's so lucky.
Yes.
I just was stuck in my head, and I wrote that down in my list of ideas, and then went on to write a bunch of other ideas. And I, did that for a few more days, but I just kind of kept coming back to that. And I circled in on this idea of talking more about luck and wanting to flip luck on its head, because I often think that luck can be used as almost a shady word, particularly when talking about women.
To undermine.
And attributing the success of women, and then don't have some melanin on top of being a woman, to something else. It's always something else. It's always, well, who did they sleep with? Well, who gave them that? Well, whose trust fund do they have? Well, who's paying their bills? They're lucky that they have this. And I've been told that I'm, lucky in a shady way for some of the things that happen. And I was like, yeah, I am really lucky. And you know what helped me be really lucky? All those years of waking up at 4 a.m. and committing to my fitness and committing to my journaling and going to therapy and putting in a lot of the work that a lot of people around me weren't willing to do. And yeah, when those lucky things happened, me doing all of those things really prepared me for that moment. And so it was almost this idea of like, okay, what if we kind of reclaimed luck to not be this shady thing where it's happenstance, or where we're attributing the amazing things that are happening to us to other people? How can we reclaim that to show the things that we did to prepare ourselves? And I actually think that it was a kind of natural evolution for where the content was going anyway. And, we went live with it earlier this year, and our community has actually responded so well, because I was terrified to do it.
Oh my God.
Terrified. I was scared.
So
I was scared. And I have had so many people tell me they like it more since the change.
For sure.
And my audience has really stuck with me and has been so engaged and so supportive. And for that, I'm so grateful.
It's amazing, because I think that when you look at the evolution of the brand, it's still in its core ethos the same thing.
Yeah.
It's just that it's refined to be even more useful and beneficial and get to the core of where we are now. And I got to tell you, I love it. Spoiler alert, everybody. It's not luck. It's claiming it, and that's what we're hearing in every episode that you're doing. You're letting these, Black women unpack what people may define as luck, and you're nailing it. Now, before, we wrap, I have to ask, I've heard you say that you're kind of in your full on claiming everything that belongs to you season, that you are no longer going to be bashful about the work that you've put in. And, you know, for the people who are looking at you, for the people from the outside who are saying, you know, you are lucky, or, you know, which is why it's exciting to have someone who has your podcast numbers and is out here, you know, with this visibility on here to say, like, it's not just luck. What else are you being fully humble braggy about? Right? Like things that you are no longer saying are just things that happen to you, but things that you're owning that you created. Like, what are you going to be loud about now?
Ooh.
Give me three. Give me three things that you're like, God. Where you're like, yes, like, look, I can do them for them. These arms earned. Okay. Like that, like, what is it?
I think that is something, you know, I would say fitness is one of them that is, you know, and as I talked about earlier, my early 20s, my relationship with fitness and my body was a little spooky, you know, and I think a lot of women kind of feel that way. But I am so proud of myself that I was curious about fitness in early adulthood, and I built the habits to be strong and to move my body. Yes. And I've made it a top priority in my life. And I did at 22. And now at 36, I feel like, oh, this is why I did that. Like now I'm beginning to really see the benefits of that I feel great. And I'm so fortunate.
So you don't hear your bones in the morning? Like when you get up?
I don't. And I'm so lucky.
So I could have avoided that if I time traveled back to 22, then maybe my bones wouldn't sing in the morning.
I mean, but who knows? In a couple years, my bones might sing, but this morning they didn't.
I don't know, girl. Mine started at 35. I get up and the kids be like, "Oh, mom," it's like that because they hear me. I can't even sneak out of a room anymore, girl. It's loud. So yeah, that's just what it is.
I think that's something that I'm definitely very proud of myself for. Is like my younger self had the foresight to build that habit early, and that it's a big part of who I am. And now that I'm a little bit older and I feel good, I'm like, oh, this is why I did that.
Yes.
And I didn't know. I wasn't thinking about my 36-year-old self at 22, because who thinks about being 36 when you're 22?
Yes.
You know, I just hated my job and was chasing endorphins. That was why I started working out.
That's good.
I just needed a happy hormone somewhere, so I would start going to the gym. So that's one. I think just like my dedication to my well-being is something that I'm very proud of, because it's not easy, and it's something that I have been able to maintain for a long time.
It's amazing that in the podcast journey, this is one of the things that you found, you know, through the blog, through all the pieces, through the interacting. Incredible. So, you know, for the people out there who are saying to themselves, you know, wish to have that visibility. I wish to have the glow up. I wish to have, you know, all of this. And I'm currently in my closet, you know, with terrible lighting and my teeny tiny mic and, you know, 0 listeners and 1-star reviews. What would you want them to believe? If there was one thing you could send to every single Black girl out there, you know, and woman in general, you know, who's saying to themselves, I need a stroke of luck. What would you tell them?
I think we put too much focus on having motion. We need to worry less about having motion and worry more about being in motion. So what is the action? What is it that we're doing? I think that no amount of change is too small to be impactful. So whether that's the tiniest tweak to your routine, if you're a podcaster and you feel like you're not getting the results that you want, how can you try one new thing with your show? How can you see, you know, people are always like, well, Les, how do you promote your show? I'm like, well, how do you see me promote it? How did you find out about the episode? What is it what's your social strategy? Well, what do you see on my socials? What do you see me doing? Imitate it. I don't care. Try it. Create your version of it. Look, there's so much education out there from just what other people are doing, that if you can study what other people are doing and adapt it and make it your own and tweak it and just keep refining and stay in motion, you'll get there.
Oh, that's good. You're so good at this. I'm excited because, you know, having known, seen, and followed your journey, I know that in 5 years, the podcast is going to be called something different. Okay. You're going to be tired of all of us. You're probably going to be, I don't know what you're going to be saying.
I kind of want to retreat somewhere and write romance novels.
It could be that.
That's kind of what, that's what I want to do in my 40s.
I don't know, but it's possible.
Yeah.
And I think if there's anything I appreciate about you and the work you do, it's about showing us the possibilities. So thank you for sharing even more about behind the scenes, because it's a joy to see this side of you. And I think we're all here for the journey. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for asking me tough questions. That was hard.
You did great.
Thanks
so much for being here. We're going to have everything you need to find and follow Les in the show notes below. Obviously, you can follow the She's So Lucky podcast if you don't already. And if you don't already, like, what is wrong with you? Do that, right? Make sure that you leave me and her 5-star reviews, subscribe, follow us everywhere. And of course, if you're not following her on Threads, do that. Because if you love
It's unhinged.
Yeah, it's unhinged, but it's funny. Be cackling while dealing with these children, okay? And come back next week because we've got even more to tell you about.